Some things were the same 70 years ago as they are today. Italy were defending world champions. The Stade Velodrome was the pride and joy of the city of Marseille. And it was here that Vittorio Pozzo's Azzurri went to commence their World Cup defence in 1938. They faced a team making their World Cup debut, Norway. And it was winner takes all, because in those days, football's premier tournament was a straight knockout. It took only 2 minutes for Italy to take the lead, but Norway equalised to force extra time before finally succumbing 2-1. Norway's World Cup slate remained blank for over half a century until a golden generation arrived. Finishing top of their qualifying group ahead of far more seasoned football nations, Norway took their place at the 1994 FIFA World Cup in the USA.
I think everybody was just excited, you know, the players, but also, and the coaches obviously, but also all the people, you know, everybody, you know, we've been, it was a big surprise because we beaten England and Holland, and England did not qualify, and we qualified. Unbelievable, you know, so the atmosphere and enthusiasm from every Norwegian people was fantastic, and football is the biggest sport in Norway. So when we qualified for the first time, you know, like we did that time, it was something very special.
56 years is a long time in football, and the World Cup had changed significantly. Now guaranteed a minimum of 3 group games, Norway faced Mexico in their opening match as virtual newcomers on the world's biggest stage.
It was a high point of my career looking back to have played in a World Cup. The bad thing about it is that we were like a teenagers coming to a grown-up party. I mean, we did every mistake in the world it was possible to do in the preparation. When we came over there, it was hotter than Sahara. It was so hot, and we were training the same amount of training that we did here, twice a day and everything, and we made a tennis tournament in the middle of the day, the players. We did every mistake in the world.
Despite the inexperience and the somewhat unconventional preparations, Norway survived the Washington heat. In the 84th minute, Kjetil Rekdal put the men from cool Scandinavia into the lead. The score stayed that way, and Norway had their first ever World Cup victory. It came as a surprise to many, but not to Henning Berg.
I expect Norway to beat Mexico often, having said that, so that was not a big surprise. Yes, they're not a bad team, but we qualified for the World Cup ahead of, I think, both Holland and England, so, you know, for us to beat Mexico at that time was not an upset or a big surprise.
And then, just like 1938, they met Italy. This team possessed the likes of Franco Baresi, Paolo Maldini and Roberto Baggio. Once more, Norway held their own. But even after Italian keeper Gianluca Pagliuca had been sent off, Norway's inability to score let them down. A free kick in the 69th minute proved to be their downfall, as Dino Baggio's strike was the difference between the teams. This group of death was about as tight as they come. All Norway needed against Ireland was a single goal, but their finishing was wayward. With the game ending goalless and Italy and Mexico tying 1-1, each team had 4 points and identical goal differences. Norway was eliminated on goals scored. Their weakness in front of the target had cost them dear.
We were in a group of death as it ended up, with all teams on 4 points. But having said that, when we went out, we felt that we hadn't done enough ourselves.
It was disappointed for us not to do better when we played Ireland in the last game. We ended up 0-0, and in the game we should have done more to create chances and to score goals. We were a little bit playing too much safe and not going for it 100%. That was a big regret when you're in a World Cup and not taking the chance, you know, to make sure that you go through.
Norway had come to the World Cup with no experience, and it had ended in disappointment. But they'd learned a lot of valuable lessons.
Sometimes we get too clever, and I think when we go into the World Cup, I was playing abroad, a lot of the players abroad, we think that we were too clever. Why don't we just call the Germans, who have a good preparation. Why don't we just call the Dutch and ask them, how will you do it? But we and the other Swedes, now we needed to do something differently. And I think that's the strength and the weakness of Norway as a nation.
The core of Norway's team stayed together and they qualified for France '98. Their game against Morocco saw them score twice, double their entire total from the USA. A 2-2 draw gave them a single point, and a 1-1 draw with Scotland followed, but the ominous spectre of a final group game against Brazil loomed large. 60 years after their first visit, Norway was back in Marseille for a World Cup match against the defending world champions. Only a win would guarantee their progress to the last 16. And that would be no mean feat. Despite having already assured themselves of qualification, this was no second-string Brazilian outfit. The team sheet boasted household names from Roberto Carlos to Ronaldo, and they weren't holding back. Norway survived the early onslaught, but when Bebeto opened the scoring, the writing appeared to be well and truly on the wall. But this Norwegian side knew they could score, and just 5 minutes later, Tor André Flo equalised. 5 minutes after that, Flo went down in the Brazilian area. Despite the protest, the penalty was given, and Kjetil Rekdal had the opportunity to put Norway ahead.
I know Kjetil Rekdal, who scored the winning penalty 5 minutes or 2 minutes before time. He said that he dreamt about it the night before. It was a good penalty and an important penalty, so no, it was a great night, you know, to beat Brazil with the stadium in Marseille being full, with Norwegian supporters and Brazilian supporters, and going through from the group on that day was one of the high points in my career.
Norway had made it through to the knockout stages, but once more the Italians blocked their path. Christian Vieri's goal midway through the first half was enough, and Norway were once again left thinking about what might have been.
I do think if we played up to our best standards, then we would have beaten Italy on that day, but Italy is one of those teams that they don't always play well, but they still win, you know. And yes, but it was a fantastic experience, and to be able to be involved in playing for your country in tournaments like that, you know, it was fantastic.
A disappointed Norway went home to a warm reception from their fans. And that, so far, has been that. They didn't make it to the Far East in 2002 or Germany 4 years later. But Henning Berg believes that these things go in cycles. Norway's time will come again.
At the moment, we don't have that many players out. But if we keep working with the young players and keep producing players, then maybe we got suddenly 7, 8, 80, 90-year-old coming up together and doing well. You know, because Norway is a little country, then you won't have the same talent running through all the time.
But until that time, Norway will just have to be satisfied with some very pleasant memories.